All eyes have been on Andrew Painter since the second that the Philadelphia Phillies selected him with the intention of making him the future ace of this franchise. With the expectation that he will be making his MLB debut this season, there has been plenty of attention paid to what this timeline could look like and how he has looked at the minor leagues. Well, the 22-year-old has hit a bit of a snag, getting hit around at a higher rate in recent games. I do want to highlight exactly what's going wrong, how this could impact the timeline for when we see him at the majors, and why everyone needs to take a bit of a breath on the Andrew Painter conversation as a whole. Now, before I dive fully into it, do want to remind you guys, as always, to make sure you are hitting that subscribe button. At this point in time, 73% of you guys watching these videos have not subscribed to us here at Phillies Digest just yet. There are better days on the horizons leading off the series against the Toronto Blue Jays today, and we're going to get into everything from start to finish this season. So to dive into the story, I first want to set the scene with this article from Phillies Nation here that writes in about Andrew Painter that in his last two starts with AAA Lehigh Valley, he's allowed 10 earned runs in 9 innings pitched, a stretch that culminated with his worst performance of the season when he was shelled for 6 earned runs on 8 hits in 5 innings, striking out just 4 batters while giving up 2 long balls. Hearing that might be alarming for some. After all, Painter has been tabbed as the future ace of this franchise ever since he was taken with the 13th overall pick in the 2021 draft. And when he missed 2 years because of Tommy John surgery, the anticipation to see what he looked like when he returned became palpable. Now, to interject here and give kind of my thoughts, for Painter specifically, he's 22 years old, and he has some rust buildup after not pitching the past 2 seasons because of this Tommy John surgery. And I think it is fair. I don't think there's enough brought up about the critiques with the management of that Tommy John situation. My personal opinion, he should have got the surgery far before when he did. Now, the Phillies were trying to be very proactive and really avoid having to give this young kid, at the time being 20 and 21 years old, having to have him go under the knife if he did not have to. But they were pretty cautious and kind of ended up just putting it off until eventually they just had to get the surgery here. So I kind of haven't heard that brought up as a critique in a while. That's still something I sort of feel that they just should have been, understanding of the situation, and that the reality was the reality there. That ultimately proved not to be the case, but regardless, we are back on track. Andrew Painter is on the mound. With all that said here, it isn't the easiest thing in the world for a guy in 2 of his most important developmental years of baseball to just step right back after missing that and look like himself again. There are going to be some ups and downs, and even when we can still see the top end stuff, he's had some flashes where he still looked very impressive. We got to understand that there is the other side of the coin. Now, to continue on with this article here, it writes, however, the Phillies offered a surprise take on what Painter is going through right now. Quote, that's what the minor leagues are for. It's all part of growth. At times, struggling in the minors is a good thing. He's going to have bad starts here and there, Rob Thomson said, per Scott Lauber of the Philadelphia Inquirer. This isn't to say the Phillies wouldn't have loved to see the superstar prospect dominate the AAA level before getting called up, but they also believe this could help him in the long run. Quote, a lot of guys go through high school, college, and even sometimes in the minor leagues where they don't have any failure. And then all of a sudden, they get to the big leagues and fail for the first time, and they really don't know how to get out of it, Thomson added. Now, I do think Rob Thomson is just painting this as optimistically as possible, and that's really the root of things. Of course, they want Andrew Painter to look dominant down in AAA, but I do think there is some truth to him having to face the failures early, and obviously, like, whenever you're scaling up your game levels like this, and I think baseball is the clearest example of all sports because there's so direct linear paths with the minor leagues, and obviously there is low A and double A and triple A and the different variations in between here that you can see the way that the talent level increases throughout, and there's obviously some exceptions to that as well. Triple A is kind of an interesting, as you will get those, the career quadruple A guys in there that can never quite make the majors, as well as top prospects working their way up, but nonetheless, it is a clearer path than any other sport when talking about your developmental path there. For Andrew Painter specifically, he has still hit the accelerator through these minor leagues here, that it has not been this gradual workup. He's been sitting on the sideline for the past 2 years. So there is going to be just this wake-up call, essentially, to this is what it takes to perform against this caliber of talent. Now, to dive into the stats a little bit here, I think this tweet came off. I like that he tweeted out the stats here. Shout out to Franco65. Certainly a tone with this tweet, but I do understand the message. And he writes, to people who assume Andrew Painter will be called up to the Phillies and dominate, don't look now, but he's given up 28 hits in 26 innings, including 5 home runs. His whip is up to 1.50. His ERA is 5.19. I'm not saying he won't be good. I'm just saying relax about this season. And I do think this is a fair take across the board. It's not a great sign to see the ERA above above 5 down in AAA for Andrew Painter. And I will say, watch me some of the highlights of these. There are some just meatballs that he left over the plate. But that's part of becoming a good pitcher, that you do got to take your lumps. You got to figure out what works and what doesn't, when you can sneak pitches by guys and when you can't. And I do think that brings us to our larger overall point, that I think viewing Andrew Painter as this secret weapon that is coming up to the majors is probably a misguided belief here. Now, from the Phillies' perspective, they've been somewhat consistent on the messaging. It started off a little bit more guarded during spring training and when Dave Dombrowski was a little bit more forward-facing, I would say. We get a little bit more clarity from Rob Thomson on some of these quotes, and we got this article, being written back before the season started, that the Phillies have used the term July-ish as a target for top prospect Andrew Painter's MLB debut and the integration into their rotation, but it is unlikely to come before the second half begins on July 18th. The All-Star break is from July 14th to 17th this year, and that will be the period where the Phillies back off Painter and give him some time to recuperate. Quote, "I don't think so," manager Rob Thomson said Friday when asked if Painter's arrival could come before the break. So obviously July-ish has been a fairly loose term, but we are in June right now. June 13th at the point of recording this, so that is pretty close to the horizon. The thing that I think I would bring back into the mix here, and I've been pushing for this since the beginning with Andrew Painter, is I don't understand the full pushback on not utilizing him in a bullpen role for this Phillies team. And the obvious answer, the obvious reply that you will get from this Phillies organization here is they don't want to get him out of his routine. They believe he's the ace of the future, this starting pitcher, this guy that could be a potential, like, one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball if things break correctly here. I just think that's quite like a huge assumption to take. And I personally feel that the best thing for him, the best pathway for his development, would be to make sure he's getting MLB opportunities. The best way to do that is by giving him those chances. And I get it's a different routine, but at the end of the day, pitching is pitching, man. I think getting Andrew Painter opportunities, high leverage spots to show his stuff and iron sharpen iron against the MLB's best hitters is better than him sitting on the bench or pitching every 6th day. And frankly, if we're going to have the entire conversation about this Phillies pitching rotation here, there is not this clean hole there. To dive into the depth chart, Zack Wheeler, we know what he brings as an ace to the tailor, ace to the table there. Jesus Luzardo has been a stud, back on track after those back-to-back Rocky starts where he really disappointed, fixed the tipping pitches, got a bigger glove, he's back locked in. Christopher Sanchez, the same deal, had his all-star breakout last year and has mostly settled in on the year. Ranger Suarez, back to being exactly the guy we know him to be, another guy who sort of fits into that, flex kind of role where he could potentially end up a bullpen arm if Andrew Painter ultimately is thrown into this pitching rotation there. Aaron Nola, still have to see him settle in on the season. That he has not had a good start. He is still on the injured list currently, dealing with now a stress fracture in the ribs on top of the ankle issue that he dealt with. And Mick Abel, a guy who's had to really earn his way into the minor leagues, and another guy who could use as an example who had his struggles. Then Mick Abel specifically, it looked like he was completely off the trajectory of being this capable starter at the MLB level, that he really had some down moments in the minors to the point where I think everybody sold the Mick Abel stock, that there was no longer the belief that we have to have a clear pathway for this guy. He's going to have to earn it to this point. And to his credit, he did that this year and has been given the opportunity and mostly has been pretty excellent for this Phillies team. That may just be the situation that Andrew Painter is currently in. I don't know what this means for the short-term plans, but I do think in the long term, in the short term plans, I think it means you keep him down in the minor leagues and he keeps pitching for now. That this July-ish target date might turn a little bit more to an August-ish target date, maybe in a September-ish start date, depending on how these next couple of starts go. That you don't bring this guy up to the major league level if you don't think that he's going to have a positive impact on the team, and more importantly, a positive impact on his long-term development. If you don't believe that is the case, I would be closer to saying just don't bring Andrew Painter up at all this year than I would be to kind of making it work and having a fear that he's going to get hit around there. I'm not panicking in the long run whatsoever, but I do think that, I personally have talked about it, and I think a lot of people have, is Andrew Painter is this new secret weapon that is coming to Phillies organization. I think we should just hit the pause button on that for a little bit there. But do want to hear from you guys in the comments, specifically about the bullpen conversation with Andrew Painter. Tell me the reason why that should not be the case. We've seen plenty of pitchers do it before. Bullpen is a weakness for this Phillies team. It's a clear path to getting him opportunities. That to me is the solution if, of course, he's ready at the MLB level. Why can he not give you a handful of innings, get a little taste of the major leagues for his rookie season, and then next year he's right back into the same form, the same routine, and becoming a starting pitcher again? There's, to me, is nothing wrong with that. That is how I would handle handle this situation once he is ready. But once again, do think we should all take a deep breath and settle down. So once again, let me know what you guys think about that particular outlook in the comments there. As always, want to remind you guys to make sure you are hitting that subscribe button one more time. Once again, just 27% of you guys watching these videos here on Phillies Digest have subscribed to the channel just yet. So make sure you're hitting that button, dropping a like on this video here. I'll be back talking to you next time. Peace.